thank you so much for being here. This is very little notice, and we've got a full house, and that's the way it should be. The senator got tied up with their paving Fain Road, and he had to do an inspection along the way. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time. But, you're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen and be able to talk to our senator that we're all very proud of, and a good friend of yours, a good friend of mine. Let me introduce John McCain.
Thank you, Marlon, and thank all of you for coming this morning. And I'm always to be happy to be back in the most beautiful city in Arizona. My favorite statue of any place in the world is Bucky O'Neill, the sheriff who went to fight with Teddy Roosevelt, who is my role model. Anyway, I won't meander on, but thank you, Marlon, for your stewardship of this beautiful city. And we love mayors, and also the mayor of Cottonwood is here. I think Diane, Diane, how are you? And the mayor of Dewey Humboldt, Terry Nolan, I think, is here also. Terry, thank you. And Prescott Councilmember Lynn Scamardo is here. Lynn, thank you. Good to see you. Chris McNeil is here. Chris, how are you? Good to see you. Steve Blair is also. Steve, how are you? And our police chief, Gerald Monahan. Chief, and Yavapai Regional Medical Director Tim Barnett is here also, and there are many others who are here. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. I'm very happy to see you. There's a lot of things going on in the world and in the country, and I'd like to just say, first of all, mayors are important. My favorite mayor, I think, of all time was a guy named Herb Drinkwater from Scottsdale. Many of you may remember. My favorite story about him, he, like Marlon, had his name and phone number in the phone book, and one night at 2 a.m. the phone rang, and he answered the phone, and the guy had a problem, and he said, okay. He said, give me your number, I'll get back to you. He said, so the next night he called up the guy at 2 a.m. and said, I got the answer to your problem. He said, I knew you'd be up. So anyway, and also my favorite governor story is about the two inmates in the chow line in the state prison. And one of them turned to the other and said, the food was a lot better in here when you were governor. That joke didn't go over very well in Illinois. I can tell you that. I'm happy for the warm welcome. Thank you. In case you missed it, the approval rating of Congress is down to 11%. We're down to paid staffers and blood relatives. Recently there was a poll that showed favorability of different things in our lives. It was just favorability. Asked people, they ranked them. Now, members of Congress ranked just below a colonoscopy. Having had some experience there, that's pretty low. But anyway, so I'm glad to be with you. I want to talk to you about three things very quickly, and then I'd like to respond to your questions and comments. One is latest news about Benghazi. We know there's substantial evidence that that attack was carried out by people who are members of Al-Qaeda. So to think that this is some kind of spontaneous demonstration, you may remember when this whole thing broke that the ambassador of the United Nations, Susan Rice, went on all 5 Sunday morning shows. I was on one of them and was astounded, and said this was a spontaneous demonstration because of a hateful video. Well, when members of Al-Qaeda are in it, my friends, it isn't a spontaneous demonstration. And the reason why I bring it up is because there's still many questions that are unanswered about Benghazi. We lost 4 brave Americans in that attack. There were people who were in the fight that were evacuated the next day to Germany for medical treatment. The administration has still refused us to tell us who those people are. We still haven't found out the talking points that the ambassador used that morning. We still don't know who changed those talking points, because originally the language that she was going to use had to do with Islamic extremists. Why is it that it took over 7.5 hours of this fight they were in? Remember that 2 of them were killed at the very end in the last hour. Why we weren't able to get assistance to our consulate there. But we owe it to the families of these people who have come to see me and want answers. And of course, put yourself in their places, you would want answers as well. What we need is a congressional select committee.
I'd like answers. You helped get us into 2 costly
You know
bloody
something,
wars,
sir? There was
and now
one
you're
thing
trying
about
to
town
drag
hall
us
meetings,
into
and that
2
is
more.
that we are respecting
2
each
more
other,
wars.
and we're going to have
What
to
is
throw
wrong
you out
with
of
you?
here.
Don't
Get
you
out.
think it's time
Go
for
ahead,
the
get out.
old war
Get
horses
out.
to go out to
Take care
pasture?
of him, William. You know,
We don't need
you are
another war. We
disrespectful.
don't need 2 more wars.
You are disrespectful to everybody here, sir, by interrupting.
I'm a veteran,
me.
and you're
I don't
putting
care
our
what you
guys
are,
at
you're
risk,
still
and they're all
disrespectful
over
to
the
your
world.
fellow citizens.
All
So
over the
take a
world.
hike. Your disrespect is disgraceful for
You're
us.
disrespectful. Bye.
On that opening note. So the other issue I want to talk about very briefly, of course, is the tragedy that took place in Boston. I don't know whether these young men were homegrown or not, whether they were just radicalized by the internet. It's a fairly sophisticated devices they were building. There is the issue of the young man who went to Russia and stayed for a long period of time. We don't know who he contacted there or what. There is, which is a segue into the immigration reform issue, is that why is it that a person who is in the United States of America on a visa, supposedly for humanitarian reason, because that person can't stay in the country that they came from, that he went back and visited? Now that's not logical. And one of these young people who covered up for them was on a student visa and yet was dropped out of the school. What is our system? Our whole system is on these visas, humanitarian, student, all that. We're going to have to review it. And a good place to review all of this, the process that we're in, would be in comprehensive immigration reform, in my view. Because if we're going to allow people to come in this country under one proposition, that they're a student or humanitarian, and that's not a valid reason, then those people's visas should be revoked. Which breaks me into immigration reform. A lot of Americans don't know that 40% of the people who are in this country illegally did not cross our border, but they overstayed their visas. 40% of the people who are in this country illegally never crossed our border illegally. So that's a part of it that we have to address. But the other part of it I want to mention to you is our border is not secure. But our border is a lot more secure than it was some time ago, and I'd like to just show you some numbers. These are the apprehensions that they're down. This is how much fencing has been built, and in the new provision we're going to require $1.5 billion of additional fencing, and this is the size of the Border Patrol. 1993, 4,000 up to 21,000, and our bill will require additional Border Patrol, and it will require additional fencing. And most importantly of all, it will require the use of technology that has been developed in Iraq, where you can surveil the entire border if you do it right. There was a radar developed in Iraq because of the IEDs that were killing so many of our brave young people over there, that this radar, which is called Vader radar, it not only can detect people where they are, but it can follow them back to where they came from. You can understand why that was so important in Iraq, because these guys were planning these IEDs, and now with that radar they could track back where they came from and where they put them together. So we have the technology, combined with drones, and we need more drones on the border. We can gain 90% effective control of the border. Now, I bring this up first to you because Arizona is the battleground. The majority of drugs that come across the Mexico-Arizona border come across in the Tucson sector. So for us to tell the American people that we will have comprehensive immigration reform without control of our border is a disservice. I love Ronald Reagan. All of us here love Ronald Reagan. But in 1986, we did amnesty for 3 million people, and we said we would secure the border, and we didn't, and now we have 11 million people who are in this country illegally, and I promise you we cannot give the American people and people of Arizona a third wave. And that's why it's so important for us to get our border secure. Now, by the way, if you want all the details of what we're doing, if you have questions that need to be answered, please call my office. We have one here. We'll get all of that information out to you and I hope all your questions answered. Arizona is the battleground. We have to convince, I have to convince, Jeff Blake and I, convince the people of Arizona that we will have a secure border. And the ranchers who are in the southern part of our state will not have every night people crossing their property, and never again should we have a rancher killed by someone who came across this border, as Mr. Prince was. So, and by the way, after we make all this investment, after 5 years before anybody is eligible, the people who are here we give legal status to are eligible to apply for a green card, we will have a survey, and if it's not secure, we will convene a commission, which I hope the governor of Arizona would be part of, and we will spend another $2 billion. And by the way, all of the money that we are spending will not be cost to the taxpayers. It will be fees that will be paid in order to people who want to become citizens of this country. A $500 fee when they are declared that they are here in legal status, a $500 fee after 5 years, a $1,000 fee if they want to apply for a green card after 10 years. So it will not be at taxpayers' expense. The whole reasoning behind this is that we have 11 million people living in the shadows. That's a fact. And what they have now is de facto amnesty. They have de facto amnesty because they're not forced to leave. So, and there are people who are criminal elements amongst those 11 million. The overwhelming majority of them are hardworking, decent people, you know, who came to this country for the same reason why literally everyone in this room's forefathers came to this country, for a better life. But we cannot discriminate in favor of people who live close by as opposed to people who live far away. We want everybody in the world to have a chance to come to the land of opportunity. So we have to have secure borders, we have to have visas, and one of the things we're changing in visas is, right now we have a thing what's sort of called chain immigration, where you're a relative, a distant relative, a close relative, then if you're here, then you can apply for a visa for those people and citizenship. We're going to have a point system. You can speak English, you get points. If you have a job, you can get points. If you have an education, you can get points. We also want people to come to this country who will immediately contribute to the economy of this country. Over 50% of the people in this country today who are getting advanced degrees in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, we call them STEM, over 50% of those students are not from the United States of America. And so, what we're going to do on that situation is, if someone graduates with a graduate degree in any of those technical sciences that I'm talking about, they will be eligible for a green card, so that we can keep them. There's 25,000 Chinese students in school today in those sciences, and if they want to stay in the United States, we should give them a chance to. Agriculture workers was a big problem in what we are doing. One of the reasons is because down in Yuma, we need people for 3 or 4 months a year and then go back. That's because of the seasonal aspects of our lettuce growing and others. In the southeast, we have these factories where they process chickens, and they're year-round employment. In Iowa, they have the pork ones. So in the Northeast, they have dairy farmers. And by the way, there is a requirement in all of these workers, guest worker programs, that the employer must advertise for a job for a certain period of time in every venue, including online, so that American citizen will have the opportunity to take the jobs first. So there's a lot more aspects of it. We need to have a national discussion. I believe that the overwhelming majority of the American people, and I can show you polling data, it shows about 70% of the American people favor this idea, as long as those people who are here illegally learn English, pay back taxes, pay a fine, and most importantly, get in line behind anybody who came to this, who applied for a green card legally, either here or someplace else, as long as they get behind. Now, they broke our laws by coming here illegally, okay? And that's why the fine and the background check and all of that is necessary in order for them to apply for a green card. I would remind you that it will be a 10-year period where will elapse. First of all, if it's passed, if the law is passed, anyone who came to this country illegally prior to December 11, 2011 will be able to apply for a permanent legal status. But then it's and pay a $500 fine, among other things. And then 10-year period will go by, and 10 to 13 years, then they can apply for a green card, and then after that. So it's a long process, it's a hard process. I was down in Tucson yesterday. Many of our Hispanic friends who are immigration advocates who are really upset about the length of time to citizenship. I tried to explain to them that it shouldn't be easy to become a United States Senator. It should be hard. And we've got to make sure that we clear out the backlog of those people who have already applied and have come to this country legally under a green card status. I could go on for a long time about this bill, but I'd like to hear what's on your minds about this or anything else that's on your mind. Yes, sir.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I can hear you. I hope
I'll talk
everybody can
loud.
hear you. Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Really appreciate you, and happy early Memorial Day. My name is John, and
Maybe you want to stand up, John. So.
my name is John, and I'm a certified teacher, and I work at a behavioral health clinic. I mentor kids who are have problems and stuff. I usually work around 50 to 60 hours a week. On top of that, I have 2 little kids and a wife, so I mean, I try to do what I can to help society. I'm part English, Irish, Scottish, Finnish, Navajo, Mexican, German, Jewish, Spanish, and my wife's Italian. So I'm not against immigration. I'm definitely, like you are, I'm assuming, I'm against illegal immigration. And all nations have borders. There's nothing racist about a border. And so that kind of frustrates me when people say, well, if you enforce your border, you're racist. And don't worry about drinking water, we won't clown on you. So what I see is that, like, if you have a cut or a scrape, the first thing you do is you stop that bleeding with a physical barrier. And so I'm talking about the 60% of people who cross the border illegally. They come here illegally with a border crossing. And so in my head, the very first thing would be to make a fence or a wall, because all this drone stuff, and that's all good, but everyone knows that technology can break down. And just like this Bucky O'Neill statue that's standing out here, has been here for years and will be here for hundreds of years, a wall will be here for hundreds of years too. And I'm not just talking about the southern border, I'm talking about the northern border. I know that sounds crazy to do southern and northern border, but I mean, the ancient Chinese built a wall through mountains that you can see from outer space. We're American. We can do this. And this is a great shovel-ready job that I'm sure that Obama would have a hard time turning down. Well, I don't know. I never underestimate him. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. So that's basically what
I got you.
That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, John. Thank you, and thanks for all. You're a role model to many young people and young families. First of all, there is a requirement for walls and fences particularly in populated areas. 15 years ago, at San Diego, some of you may recall, illegal immigrants would just run, groups of them, right up the freeway and be able to get away. Now we have triple fencing in San Diego. It's sealed. It's sealed. But it's sealed because you have a fence and you have surveillance. Because unless you surveil a fence, people will climb over it, or they'll dig under it, or they will punch through it. And the Great Wall of China, that dynasty failed because they weren't able to defend that wall. So it's a combination of fencing and surveillance, because people, listen, right now, not right now, but there have been many cases where they've just gotten an RV and just drove right through it. So you've got to have the surveillance side of it and the enforcement side of it. Now there are places in populated areas we have to have fencing, and I believe double fencing in most places on our border. But when you get out into the remote areas, then you need to be where someone has to travel for 10, 15, 20, 30 miles before they get to any thoroughfare. Then I would rather spend my money on being able to surveil and detect them and send out mobile teams and round them up than have somebody sitting on the border in a vehicle next to a fence in 120-degree heat. My friends, today, it'll probably be well over 100 degrees down on the Arizona-Sonora border. You run out of efficiency very soon with human beings when they are subjected to those kinds of temperatures. So I agree with you about fences, but I also think that surveillance is a key element of it, because unless you surveil and enforce that fence, people are going to just punch right through it, or they're going to dig underneath it. Or I saw one where they had a car hung up on the top of one of our fences. They had built tracks up to it, and it was sitting on top of the fence. Maybe some of you had seen that. So I agree with you, except that technology will help us move quickly and intercept these people. Yes, sir.
Mr. McCain, my name is Ken Kisner. This is short and sweet. I agree with everything you're saying on what you're intending to do here. My question is, what is the possibility or probability of getting this passed into law through Congress?
I think that as you know, I tried this in 2007, and I think there's been a significant change, especially among Republicans. Congressman Paul Ryan, who, as you know, was our vice presidential candidate in the last election, has come out strongly in favor. A lot of people have, recognizing, again, this status quo is unacceptable. The House of Representatives, I think, will be watching carefully what the Senate does. I say that with typical Senate snobbery. And yet I do believe if we could get a significant vote, like over 70 votes in the Senate, that would put a lot of pressure on the House of Representatives. And again, you know, Congress, we elect people to reflect the will of the people. And now we do have a majority of Americans. There may be some disagreement on exactly how you do that. But to just have the status quo what we are is unacceptable. And I just want to mention one other part of this problem, which is underreported and under-talked about, and I think that it's terrible that we do, and that's drugs. My friends, as long as the United States of America is creating a demand for drugs, there's going to be a supply. And when we glamorize drugs, when you see movies of people enjoying drugs, when it's a recreational enterprise, when we see what methamphetamine does to people, and then we've got to start a national conversation about drugs. And we've got to talk about it because there is a growing demand for drugs. These people have used submarines, they've used ultralights, they've dug tunnels, because the laws of economics, the fundamentals of economics are that if there's a demand, somehow there's going to be a supply. So I want to secure our border, but I also want to address this drug issue as adequately and appropriately as we can. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Deborah, and I would like for you to answer my question in your most maverick ability. And I don't want to hear any boos. you're familiar with Senate Resolution 511 dated 2008 that made you eligible to run for the office of the President of the United States. And in that Senate resolution, which maybe you can explain to me how those work, you were recognized as a natural-born citizen not only because you were born on U.S. soil in the Panama Canal Zone, but also because you were born of U.S. citizen parents. And in my opinion, and I've been trying to get an answer for 5 years, why did this apply to you and not Barack Obama? As everyone knows, he born in Hawaii, Kentucky, Texas, doesn't matter. What matters is that his father was a Kenyan citizen, and the Senate Resolution 511 that authorized you to be on the ticket did not apply to him.
Well, first of all, it wasn't a resolution that made me eligible to be the nominee of the party. It was a United States Supreme Court decision concerning, believe it or not, Barry Goldwater. Because Barry Goldwater was born in Arizona when it was still a territory. And his case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And the reason why Barry Goldwater was declared eligible was because he was born in a U.S. territory and therefore was eligible to meet the constitutional requirement. It's the Constitution of the United States. Ma'am, let me finish. It is the Constitution of the United States that says you must be a natural-born citizen. It is no Senate resolution. It's the Constitution of the United States. Now that resolution may have sprung from the Constitution, but the Constitution is what was tested here. So frankly, the Senate resolution is irrelevant. What is relevant is the United States Supreme Court decision that said that Barry Goldwater was eligible to run for president because he was born in the territory of the United States. So when my candidacy was challenged, the courts immediately said the Supreme Court has already decided that in the case of Barry Goldwater. And that's what that is all about. Now, in the case of Barack Obama, ma'am, I've really grown weary of that issue. That issue is dead and gone. Now, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I can assure you the Congress of the United States will not act in the case of Barack Obama's citizenship. It's over. He's been elected twice. He will finish out his term. So thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your beliefs. But the story is over.
One more point.
Yes.
In one of the lawsuits that was questioning that, his lawyer argued that he did not have to be a natural-born citizen. He could just be a citizen.
I don't care what his lawyer argued. Facts are facts.
Because he was,
I don't care about that. It's been decided, man.
Elected by the populace, so it didn't matter. Natural-born citizen.
Ma'am, I just
did not
explained to you
matter.
the basis for his candidacy, Barry Goldwater's candidacy, and mine, and you're entitled to your views on it, but we got to move on. Yes, sir.
First of all, I just want to thank you for your service. I feel that...
Speak up just a little.
Okay. As you know, about a year ago, the National Defense Authorization Act passed a bill that allows the government to kill U.S. citizens without trial. And I feel that this is an unprecedented step towards a loss of constitutional rights in this country, and that belongs to me. Here's what your thoughts are.
Well, thank you. The issue, obviously, is the drones. And drones have now become a major weapon in removing terrorists around the world who are plotting to attack the United States of America. And the case I think you probably are referring to that's most glaring is a guy named Al-Awlaki, who was an American citizen who was in Yemen, and we killed him with a drone strike. Now, if Mr. Al-Awlaki...
Pay any fine, I'm not going to pay any back taxes, and I'm not going to learn to speak English. and you're not gonna find me anyway. So do you have a plan, and what are you gonna do with them now that they're not gonna comply?
Yes, sir. And this also is important as far as the people who overstay their visas. We will have a tamper-proof e-verify system with documents that will require, that will be tamper-proof, that if anyone wants a job, those employers will have to comply with the requirements that anyone who comes for a job has that tamper-proof document. If they don't have that document and the employer hires that person, then that employer can be prosecuted for breaking the law. So if that person decides, as you say, they don't want to come forward, they don't want to pay the fine, et cetera, they're not going to be able to get a job. They're not going to be able to get a job because within 5 years, within 2 years, every major corporation is going to have E-Verify, and then over 5 years, even small businesses are going to be required. So they may stay, but if any employer hires them, that employer takes a huge risk of going to jail if it's depending on the severity of the crime. Obviously, it would first be fines. So now you want to, yes, sir, go ahead.
Yes. Mr. McCain, thank you. Dale's my name, and my question is, we have to do something about the 11 million that are here, and that's getting to the point we understand that. But why in the world are we going to allow relatives and everybody else taking this up to maybe 35? That's almost 10% of our population that we're bringing additional in here. 11 million people feel that maybe we can stand this and pay for it, but 33 is completely out of hand.
We are going to reduce rather dramatically, as I mentioned earlier, the quote chain migration, the relatives of people who can come to this country. And we will be eliminating, for example, the provision now that allows grown son and daughter to be part of this. And we will be reducing it and introducing a merit-based system, as I told you about, for eligibility for green card. We'll be replacing that chain immigration issue. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator, for being here. And by the way, would you tell your lovely wife I do drink Budweiser? So, the question I have that I have not heard is the fact of when within this bill,
nice commercial.
within this bill you're considering passing, is the opportunity for illegal immigrants to be able to vote in the United States. To me, that's first and foremost of changing the whole environment of which we live in.
Thank you, sir. Could I mention, first of all, that when they receive a legal status in this country, they're not eligible to vote. After 10 years, when they are allowed to ask for a green card, then they're still not. And it's not until they receive full citizenship, which is a minimum of 13 years, that they would be eligible to become voters. And I'd like to remind you all that the legal status that they're going to receive, it means no government benefits, no unemployment insurance, no. In fact, there's a requirement for them to have been working at 125% of the minimum wage, minimum income for the period that elapses, and they have to have not been employed for no more than 60 days, unemployed for more than 60 days. So these are very tough provisions, and I'm so grateful that so many people are behind it. But I'm hearing lately that a lot of members of our Hispanic community are very unhappy with the rigorous barriers or hurdles or compliance requirements that they will have to meet before receiving the citizenship. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I see you.
What are we doing about the Muslim Brotherhood of jihadists that have been active in our country for decades?
Well, I'm not sure the jihadists have been successful in our country. We did after 9/11 through, and some of it has to be luck, but some of the efforts of our brave law enforcement and government people, we have prevented a serious attack on the United States of America until Boston. One of the biggest problems we have, and apparently the young man, before he was Mirandized, before his lawyer told him to shut up, which drove me and Lindsey Graham and Kelly Ayotte crazy. He said that they had been indoctrinated by the internet. There are these jihadists on the internet, they go on the internet, they get their message, and they become radicalized. And that is something we're going to have to talk about. And one of the internet things that they went up on was the internet message by this guy Al-Awlaki, the one that we killed in Yemen, who was an American citizen who lived in this country for a long period of time. Yes, sir.
My name is Robert. I agree with you on the E-Verify. My identity was stolen. My mother's identity was stolen. My niece's identity was stolen and used by me illegally. I had to pay back taxes that they didn't pay. They claimed the tax return in my name. This is while I was out of the state, working in another state for a year and a half. I think that them coming up here and receiving the same rights we do, none of them served in the armed forces. You know what it's like to serve in the armed forces. You know the sacrifice it takes. But yet they come up here and they receive the same benefits and rewards as we do. I think that they should be required to maybe serve in some way, shape, or form to receive the same rewards that we do for your sacrifice.
Thank you. First of all, I hope that you would have contacted our office if you were having to pay back taxes on what someone else did with credit card theft. That's just something that I think we could have helped you fix. And
It's happening all the time. I work with them in construction.
if someone has used your credit card and you are
They didn't
being
use my
paid back,
credit card.
I'd like to answer. I listen to you now. I'd like to answer. And please come to my office, which is right up, just not far from here, and we'll get on it, because there's no reason why you should be required to pay back taxes for somebody who stole the credit card. Second of all, in the military now, somebody, you were talking about the military, we have a tamper-proof card that all the members of the military have. Not only is it tamper-proof, it has every kind of background information you can imagine, blood type, all kinds of different information. So the technology is there. And someone uses your credit card, there's going to be a swipe done of that. And that's going to show a picture. And if that picture isn't you, that person is not going to be, in fact, should be arrested because they're trying to use your credit card. That's part of E-Verify. And finally, they're not getting the same benefits. If you have a legal status here, there is no benefit. There's no unemployment insurance. There is no Obamacare. There is no nothing. They have a legal status, but they do not receive benefits until they get green card status. And by the way, there is a program today for those who are holders of green cards. If they join the military, there is an accelerated path to citizenship. And I have seen that work, and it's a great program. Yes, ma'am.
I happened to hear you, my name's Laurel Friedman, and thank you for coming up here today. I happened to hear a little interview this morning on NPR. I don't know if you knew they ran it today about sending more funds to the rebels, whoever they may be, and that's my big concern in Syria. You know, I'm old enough to have been out there protesting the Vietnam War, and then later comes the documentary, The Fog of War, with McNamara saying, yeah, maybe it wasn't such a great idea, and I know a lot of pain and suffering went along with that. You know, we were out here trying to talk people out of Iraq, and I think the majority of people in the country now are saying, well, maybe that wasn't such a great idea. It's just hard for me to sit back, and I'm afraid it's history repeating itself for us to send a bunch more. I mean, I know our military industrial complex makes lots of weapons. I know they're waiting to use them. And that's kind of my concern, that it's getting us in another morass that could spiral out of control, and another mujahideen are armed like they ended up armed in Afghanistan. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And first of all, I am committed, and I believe the American people overwhelmingly will not stand for boots on the ground in Syria. Second of all, I think when you talk about these various conflicts, let's not forget Bosnia and Kosovo and Libya. In all three of those conflicts, we used American air power, and with our case of Bosnia, well, all three of them, with our allies and friends, we were able to bring about change. Bosnia, the slaughter was enormous, and we joined together with other countries and overthrew Milosevic and stopped. And there's been friction, but there's been peace in Bosnia ever since. In Kosovo, there was ethnic cleansing going on. We again intervened with air power, and now that it's uneasy, but there is peace there. So there are examples where we have intervened and it has had a beneficial result. 70,000 people have been massacred and more in Syria. He has used everything but the chemical weapons, and now we have evidence that perhaps that he did. The jihadists are flowing in from all over the Middle East and fighting there. The Russians and the Iranians are supplying weapons. In the case of Iranians, boots on the ground. It's not a fair fight. I've been to refugee camps in both Turkey and Jordan, and I've seen the people who have been thrown from their homes, young men wounded, young women who have been gang raped, and we sit by and watch this happen. It's not a fair fight. I want a safe zone for them to organize and to help their people, which we could achieve with relative ease. And we should be arming the right kind of people. And if they're there inside Syria, they will know who the right people are and who the wrong people are to supply with the weapons. And from a strategic standpoint, General Mattis, our general over there, said that it would be the greatest blow to Iran in 25 years if Bashar Assad leaves. I will not sit by without raising my voice to see what the United States can effectively do to advocate for that, to stop this massacre and kill. So you want to follow up? Go ahead.
Well, do you mean just the United States going in and doing it, or working through the UN, or do you see that
There's
as
other
useless
countries
because
that there's
Russia?
other countries that are in it now, like Qatar, Saudi Arabia. The British and French are eager to go in, but it requires United States leadership. I know they would join us the same way they did in Libya when they picked up the brunt of the effort. But it's not the United States of America not to try to help these people if we can without getting into the kind of morass that you described. Yes, sir.
Senator, thanks very much for being here. I'm here to ask to introduce myself. My name is Ken Mossman. I'm from Scottsdale. Your good friend, Senator McConnell, who is the Senate Minority Leader, put my name forward to the White House to serve on the Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board as a Republican. As you know, the board is responsible to the Senate Armed Services Committee, of which you are the ranking member. I look forward to working with you and your staff should my nomination go forward to the committee, and should I be appointed to the board by the President, I look forward again to working with you and your staff on issues that are of equal importance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We look forward to doing everything we can to get that expedited. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator McCain. My name is Yvonne Campbell. I was born and raised in China, and I came to the United States through a naturalization system, and now I'm a proud U.S. citizen. I pay my bills and I pay my taxes just like everybody else does. So I am a living testament of legal immigration system. And in addition, I actually have a master's degree in public administration, and I'm now the town manager for the town of Humboldt. And it's actually just down the road from here. And we would like cordially invite you to visit our beautiful town as well. It is very close to here, and I'm sure you'll get a warm welcome just like here. Thank you so much. And in conclusion, I'd like to have
Thank you for that commercial.
It's my job.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Senator, I'm Tim Barnett with the Yavapai Regional Medical Center, and I'd like to talk a little bit about sequestration, but before I do, I'd like to thank you for your great service to this country and certainly to the citizens of Arizona. I'm with the Yavapai Regional Medical Center, and we're the safety net hospitals of our communities here. We just were listed on a list we really didn't want to be on, which was a Moody's Investor Services list as one of the top 12 hospitals in the country most affected by sequestration. And we have the great privilege of caring for a large Medicare population, one of the largest, not only in the state, but one of the largest in the country, and that's what placed us on our list. It's going to be over $2 million hit to our already thin and evaporating bottom line this coming year, just with sequestration. And at the same time, we're doing everything we can on cost control. We are also, the Wall Street Journal put a list out, an article you may have seen on healthcare costs around the country. Arizona is about the second lowest healthcare cost in the country. Washington, D.C. Happened to be the highest. I don't know what that means, but you know, we're already doing things as effectively as we can, and I think the privilege we have of caring for the seniors in our country that really depend on Medicare, depend on our hospitals and our physicians for health care. Is there anything we could do about that, or anything you could help us with?
Well, sequestration was a terrible mistake, and the reason why it was is because it's a meat axe approach. My friends, there are billions and billions and billions of dollars that can be saved due to the waste and inefficiency in the federal government, and I see it every day in defense. I'm a strong advocate of defense, but we waste money in an incredible fashion. The latest fighter aircraft is over doubled in cost. It's going to be the most expensive weapon system in history. So I take backseat to no one as far as saving money, but when you do it across the board in a meat axe fashion, you throw out the baby with the bathwater. So we need to repeal it, but we also need to be on a path to get our spending under control. My friends, I used to say we're mortgaging our grandchildren's future. Then I used to say we're mortgaging our children's future. Now I'm telling you we're mortgaging our future, even old geezers like me. I mean, we have now accumulated a $1.7 trillion debt. My friends, that's $51,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. And it isn't because we don't tax enough. It's because we spend too much. And so we've got to repeal the sequestration and take care of people who need to be taken care of. At the same time, when you have, I'm all for veterans jobs programs, aren't you? All of us are. Do you know there's 16 of them in the Pentagon? I mean, when you look at the waste and duplication that goes on, if any of that kind of thing went on here in Prescott, he'd be out of a job tomorrow. And so, I'm doing a great job. So all I can say is it's a huge problem. The chickens are coming home to roost, and by the way, it is going to be really hurting Arizona as far as defense is concerned, because we have major bases and we have major manufacturing facilities such as the Apache helicopter plant over in Mesa, Raytheon down in Tucson. It's going to have a devastating effect on our economy. Yes, sir.
New subject, gun control. Mentioned Toomey amendment was primarily to theoretically expand the background checks in a couple of areas. However, three things about that. Current background check, people that fail background checks, very few are ever prosecuted. Very few. I mean, it's
you're right, and
minuscule
that's disgraceful. Yes, sir.
Secondly, gun shows. By far, the most number of people selling guns at gun shows are dealers already. So they, by law, have to comply with background checks on people they're selling to. There's very few private party transfers resulting from a gun show. Internet sales. If you or me try to buy a gun from somebody out of state through the internet, it's legal, but it has to go through, in the buyer's state, has to go through a federal firearms licensee. So If it's private party within the state, it's another private party transfer. Currently, no background check is required. Same as if you advertise and sell through a newspaper ad. But Toomey Mansion would require a transfer because of a newspaper ad. That would have to now go to a dealer. And there's no method, no requirement that a dealer accept doing the processing for the transfer. There's rural areas in the country where transaction just may not be legally possible. So why in the heck did you vote for it?
Well, because I don't agree with you about what goes on at gun shows. One thing.
Have you been to a gun show?
Sure, of course. I own web guns. My son's owns guns. What's that?
When was the last time you were at a gun show?
Oh, maybe, I think it's been a couple of years. But look, there's a gun show loophole. It's there, and it goes on. And weapons were purchased, and they were purchased by straw purchasers, and they went down to Mexico. We can argue about our opinion, but those are facts. And those guns fled down to Mexico. You disagree? You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine.
But if it was
The
a straw
American,
purchase,
but it's
it
not
was from a
true.
dealer.
And so, pardon me?
If it was a straw purchase, it was from a dealer.
It was from a dealer, and it was also from people giving money and going into gun shows and doing the private negotiation for which there was no accountability. I mean, again, we obviously don't share opinions, and I'll try to give you my facts as I know them, and I appreciate your facts as you know them. All I can say is that there are loopholes out there in my view, and the fact is that guns are getting in the hands of the wrong people. And I also agree with you, though, to assume that this will solve the problem. Obviously, we ignore the fact that, one, the murder capital of America right now is Chicago, Illinois. All of those murders are not committed with AK-47s or banana clips. They're committed with handguns. And second of all, there's a huge problem in America about people who are mentally ill. In the 1950s, we, thanks to a Supreme Court decision, we emptied out the institutions where we were keeping people who were mentally ill. There are people who are mentally ill who are getting access to weapons. And the reason why the issue is so hard is, where does individual liberties end and responsibility to the greater good begin? And we have got to try to understand that better. So all I can say is, I thought it improved the background checks, and I thought that it was something that we probably needed to do. And I can tell you and show you the polling data, 85% of the American people think we ought to tighten up on background checks. Again, you say that's not true. I'll be glad to send you the polling data. I mean, I'm just quoting from the polling data. I'm not making it up. But go ahead.
If 80% of the, I'll just pull a number out of the air, if 80% of the population wants to change the Constitution, let them do it. But not through this kind of legislation that infringes on the Second Amendment.
Yeah, but
that's the wrong way to do it, sir.
You see, I've not yet met a constitution. I'm sure there's some out there, but the majority of constitutional opinion, as I know it, do not believe that this impinges on the Constitution of the United States. But anyway, yes, sir.
Lauren Harmon.
Could I say, I'm afraid this issue is not going away. I'm afraid there's going to be more of these people who are mentally ill who are going to commit these terrible crimes. We need to continue the discussion. I'm proud of my record with the NRA, and I'm glad that you're involved, and you obviously have a lot of knowledge of the issue.
And you're getting a lot of my letters and emails, yes, sir.
And I thank you. And I thank you. Look, one thing is, we have a common ground here. We want to stop these things from happening. And it seems to me we have that common ground, so therefore we should continue this dialogue between us. And I respect the fact that you're engaged to the degree that you are, because obviously you're very knowledgeable. So I thank you. I promise we'll continue the discussion.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Lauren Harmon, I'd just like to ask you to continue to put the pressure on the Benghazi incident. Most of us realize it was a cover-up, and thank you for...
By the way, if it wasn't for Fox News, this would not be what it is today. But anyway, please go ahead.
And thank you for trying to cut down the size of the government. It is too large.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. Can I do one more here and that? Yes, ma'am.
I am not real knowledgeable on why it's okay for Homeland Security, specifically Janet Napolitano, to not address questions regarding the bulk ammo purchases that they're making to Congress.
The what?
Bulk ammo.
The ammo collection.
Ammunition. Billion rounds of ammo, mostly hollow points.
It's my understanding that Janet Napolitano was questioned by Congress, and she
Yeah.
just refuses to answer.
Yeah.
Why does that happen? Is that?
I don't know, but I'd like to get back to you on it. I do not know the answer to
Got
that.
it right here.
Thank you very much. I will get it. Thank you very much. I don't have to get it immediately. Can I just say,
Do background checks?
and I know that you may be aware that ICE, because of quote sequestration, released 3,000 people. They refused to give us the names of those 3,000 people. And Senator Levin, I think, is going to, he and I both have asked for this information, and I think we're going to have to subpoena it. But there are rumors that some of these people that were released had criminal records. So, look, we've had to fight the Secretary of Homeland Security on this issue of immigration reform every step of the way. And it's really an unfortunate thing. And I do one more, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for your service. I appreciate that very much. And thanks for stopping at the VA hospital in Tucson in my room to visit me. My question back to immigration is, you were born in Panama. Do you have Panama citizenship?
Because it was the Canal Zone, which was American territory. It was not Panamanian territory. It was American territory.
Okay.
So, of course, I wouldn't have Panamanian citizenship.
Okay. If a diplomat's wife in this country has a child, do they have American citizenship? Or do they revert back to their homelands?
You know, I don't, maybe somebody knows the answer to that. I'm not sure. Yes?
If you're a diplomat, the child would be a citizen.
But in my case, I mean, it was not Panamanian territory, so, I mean, there was no question.
Okay, and my question is, we got all these immigrants coming over the borders, and the children that are being born here, are they going to have dual citizenship with Mexico and United States?
If a person is born in the United States of America according to the Constitution, then they are automatically American citizens. That's our Constitution. Now, maybe that needs to be changed, but I can tell you that what is happening, as you know, is that people are coming across, about to give birth, and then go back to Mexico. Okay, if we have our border secured, they're not going to be able to do that. If we have exit entry ID, which is part of this, well, we scrutinize people who come into this country. We don't keep track of people who leave. So if you've got a secure border, if you've got a situation where anybody who comes into this country who is not coming in legally, that you stop them, then that's going to cut back dramatically on the ability for them to come, land at the Miami airport, which happens very frequently, and take a cab ride over to the hospital and have a baby. We will be able to stop that. We will be able to stop most of it, at least, with immigration reform.
One more question, sir.
Yes, sir.
If we can't stop the drug infiltration into the country, how are we going to stop immigration? Illegal immigration.
You know, that's an excellent question, because if we secure our border, I think that they're going to come by sea. I think they're going to come by air. I think they're going to dig tunnels. And that means that we're going to have to address the issue of people who are coming, of the demand for drugs. But it's going to require cooperation with Mexico. It's going to require a lot of things. But until we stop the demand. But that is a different problem than people who are crossing our border, in my view, because they're bringing drugs in, they go back and forth, and it's a huge problem. But it doesn't affect the general population who are using this product. So I don't view it as a problem with people who are in this country illegally as much as I view it as a social problem and a societal problem that we've got to address. Why, you go to, I'm no prude, please, I spent too many years in the Navy, but when we go to movies and it's glamorized that they put cocaine on a mirror and, you know, that's kind of the thing to do, that it's in some areas of our society, it's not only socially acceptable, it's socially attractive. That has an effect on young Americans. Can I gotta go, but yes, yes, ma'am, go
But
ahead.
Senator McCain, there is another issue involving the cartels at the border, and I have this firsthand knowledge about it because my friend's son fought a fire near Sierra Vista, was it last year or 2 years ago? And the firefighters had to watch themselves, not just for fire, but the cartels have buried not only contraband, but weaponry. There were
Absolutely.
explosions and bombs and fireworks going off all around their heads. They had to watch for bullets fighting these fires because the cartels have taken over down there. And it's not an issue of just people using drugs. It's danger to our
I agree. It was
citizens.
a rancher named Krantz that was killed by these people. It was Brian Terry who was killed by these people. Absolutely. Your point, I don't disagree with your point in the slightest. Can I say it's wonderful to be back? Can I say thank you? And I think we need to continue this debate and discussion. I'd like to come back to immigration reform to you one more time. We think that it may come to the floor of the Senate in a few weeks, and then it would be amended. And I'd like to hear from you and your views and your ideas, and I'd like to send to you the outlines of this legislation and most often questions that are asked about it. This is an important time in our history. If we don't, in my view, act on it within the next several months, then I think it will be forever. And all of us, I think, agree on the premise that it's unacceptable to have 11 million people living in the shadows in this country. And in all due respect, we're not going to deport all of them. And so we have to address the issue in a comprehensive fashion, but a fair and equitable one, and promise the people of Arizona that this will never happen again, because we cannot stand a third wave. And I thank you for being here. I look forward to seeing you. Come to Washington and visit your money. And it's hard trying to do the Lord's work in the city of Satan these days. Thank you very much.